The Democratic Party, founded in the early 19th century, initially catered to agrarian interests and maintained a pro-slavery stance, reflecting the priorities of Southern constituents. This foundational period set the stage for the party's long-standing resistance to civil rights, a stance that would only begin to pivot much later in its history. The early Democrats were instrumental in enforcing policies that upheld slavery and opposed measures that sought to end it, laying a complex groundwork for the civil rights struggles that would follow.
During the antebellum period, the Democratic Party's policies were deeply intertwined with the maintenance of a slave-based economy, particularly evident through their support of laws like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which mandated that escaped slaves be returned to their owners. These positions not only supported, but perpetuated the systemic racism and inequality that marked the era, setting a precedent for future party policies.
The impact of these early decisions would echo throughout the ensuing decades, influencing the party's stance on civil rights issues. Contrastingly, the opposition to these policies was fragmented and disorganized until the emergence of the Republican Party, which consolidated anti-slavery sentiments.
This period highlights the stark ideological divisions that existed on the topic of civil rights, divisions that were deeply rooted in the political landscape of the United States. The polarization seen in these early years would only intensify as the nation moved towards the Civil War, a conflict that would forever alter the trajectory of civil rights in America.
As this section outlines, understanding the Democratic Party's early alignment with anti-civil rights policies is crucial for comprehending the complex historical landscape of political parties in the United States. This alignment not only shaped the party's actions during crucial historical moments, but also influenced the broader national policies regarding civil rights and equality. The Republican Party was founded in 1854, born out of a coalition of anti-slavery activists, ex-Whigs, and Free Soilers, all united under the cause of abolitionism.
Did you know that the Republican Party was the first major party to have anti-slavery as a central tenet? Really? That's fascinating. So they were directly challenging the Democrats' pro-slavery stance? Exactly. From its inception, the Republican Party positioned itself against the pro-slavery policies upheld by the Democrats, especially in the southern states. And Abraham Lincoln was their first president, right? He really stood for their anti-slavery stance. Yes, he epitomized it. Elected in 1860, his presidency was soon overshadowed by the Civil War, a direct consequence of the deep divisions over slavery. The Civil War must have been a tumultuous time. What about the Emancipation Proclamation? Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 declared the freedom of all slaves in Confederate-held territory. It was a landmark action, cementing the Republican Party's commitment to civil rights during that period. And after the war, during Reconstruction, the Republicans pushed for significant civil rights legislation, right? Absolutely. They were behind the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery, granted citizenship rights, and protected voting rights for African Americans. Those were radical changes at the time. They marked significant victories for the Republican Party and civil rights. Indeed. But the party's commitment to civil rights wasn't without challenges and criticisms. I imagine there were internal divisions and external pressures that led to compromises and setbacks. Exactly. This complexity adds a layer of nuance to the party's historical role in civil rights, showing that while it was founded on anti-slavery principles, its journey has been marked by continual evolution and redefinition.
Following the Civil War, the Reconstruction era presented a significant opportunity for major social reform and civil rights advancements in the southern United States. However, the Democratic Party, particularly its southern faction, resisted these changes vehemently. Their opposition was not just political, but often violent, as many Democrats supported or were involved in racial violence against African Americans attempting to exercise their new rights. This resistance was institutional as well. Many Southern Democrats implemented black codes, laws designed to restrict the freedoms of African Americans and ensure their availability as a cheap labor force. These laws were a clear continuation of the pre-Civil War status quo and demonstrated the Democratic Party's ongoing resistance to the civil rights advancements being made during Reconstruction. The Compromise of 1877, which marked the end of Reconstruction, was heavily influenced by the Democratic Party's resistance. This agreement effectively handed the presidency to the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes in exchange for the withdrawal of federal troops from the South, leading to the rapid undoing of many Reconstruction-era reforms. This period underscored the stark differences in the approaches of the two parties towards civil rights and Reconstruction. The end of Reconstruction led to nearly a century of entrenched racial segregation and disenfranchisement in the South, known as the Jim Crow era, largely maintained by Democratic policies. This period highlights the profound impact that political parties can have on civil rights, with the Democratic Party playing a central role in opposing civil rights advancements during Reconstruction. Throughout U.S. history, the Supreme Court has played a pivotal role in shaping the landscape of civil rights, often reflecting the prevailing political ideologies of the times. Key decisions such as the Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857, which declared that African Americans could not be American citizens, were influenced by the pro-slavery sentiments that permeated political parties, particularly the Democrats. However, as the political landscape shifted, so did the nature of the Supreme Court's decisions. The landmark case of Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which ruled that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, marked a significant shift in civil rights jurisprudence. It's important to note that this decision came at a time when the Democratic Party began to slowly realign its views towards civil rights under the influence of changing national and international pressures. Further reinforcing civil rights, subsequent rulings such as Loving v. Virginia in 1967, which struck down laws banning interracial marriage, showcased the evolving role of the judiciary in promoting civil rights, often ahead of or in opposition to the prevailing sentiments within the political parties. Such decisions have not only shaped the legal landscape, but have also influenced public opinion and party policies over time. The interaction between the Supreme Court and political parties has been a dynamic and sometimes contentious process, reflecting the broader struggles for civil rights in the United States.